Have you ever been in church? The one place on earth you're supposed to feel like you belong, but instead you get this sting, that quiet, nagging feeling that you're kind of on the outside. And some people just seem to matter more. If you know what I'm talking about, you are not alone. And today, we're going to unpack that.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to name that unsettling feeling. Then we'll peel back the layers and figure out what's really going on underneath. From there, we'll look at the very real danger this can lead to if we're not careful. And then the most important part, we are going to walk through 5 super practical steps to protect your heart and build a whole new, healthier way of thinking. All right, let's just get right to it and put the question on the table. Have you ever felt like your pastor plays favorites? It's a really tough question to even ask, isn't it? But it gets to the heart of that subtle feeling that maybe, just maybe, things aren't quite as fair as they should be. And it's usually not one big thing. It's the small stuff that adds up, right? It's the patterns. You notice that some people's calls get returned, like instantly. Some people get meetings way faster. It just feels like there's more access, more attention, more warmth. And if we're being honest, it often seems like that warmth is pointing toward the big givers or the folks with a lot of social clout. And when you see that pattern enough, a story starts to write itself in your mind. A little voice that whispers, yeah, this place is for the rich members. The rest of us, we're just numbers on a spreadsheet. And that right there is where the real danger begins. Because you might still show up on Sunday, but you're starting to check out emotionally, quietly judging from the cheap seats. So what is actually going on when we feel this? We've got to dig a little deeper here, because it's more than just an observation. It's a feeling that has layers, and to deal with it, we need to understand every single one of them. It really happens in 3 stages. First, there's perception. You notice what looks like a pattern. Then, that perception leads to pain, that legitimate human sting of feeling unseen, like you're less valued. And if we don't handle that pain well, it can curdle into accusation, where that seed of mistrust starts to grow, and we start to judge our pastor's heart. And here's the thing. This feeling isn't crazy. It's not some new 21st century problem. The Bible itself, in the book of James, gives this incredibly sharp warning against showing partiality to the rich. So that gut feeling you have, it's tapping into something very real, something God cares about deeply. Now, this is where things get a little complicated. We have to hold 2 truths at once. On one hand, God despises favoritism, period. But on the other hand, there's just the reality of leadership. A pastor has to spend time with their key leaders, their staff, and yes, with major financial partners. So it's not always favoritism. A lot of the time, it's just the necessary work of stewarding the church. But it can really, really look like favoritism from the outside. And this is exactly where it gets so dangerous. The real threat here isn't that first feeling of hurt. The threat is what happens when that hurt hardens into a conclusion, and that conclusion becomes our excuse for disloyalty. And this is what that downward spiral looks like, isn't it? You subtly pull back from serving. You find yourself criticizing every building campaign or new project. Every time you see the pastor talking to a well-off member, your internal alarm goes off. And before you even realize it, you've gone from being a family member to being an accuser in your own house. Okay, so how do we stop that spiral? How do we get out of that? This is without a doubt the most important part of this whole conversation. The practical, real-world things we can do to guard our hearts and handle this in a way that actually brings life instead of division. So here it is, a 5-step roadmap. We're going to start with God, then move to checking our own perspective, then watch our words, maybe even open the door for a conversation, and finally land on making a personal choice. Let's break them down. Step 1 is absolutely crucial. Pray before you proclaim. Before you vent to your spouse, before you text your small group, you take that initial sting straight to God. Let Him be the very first person you talk to about this. Process it in prayer before you process it with people. And that prayer can be super honest, something just like this. Lord, I feel invisible here. I really don't want to become judgmental. So please, show me what's true. Help my heart stay pure. You see what's happening there? You're not denying the feeling, but you are surrendering the right to let it turn into bitterness. You're asking for truth, not just for your feeling to be confirmed. And that can change everything. Okay, step 2, we have to check our own information. We have to be brutally honest with ourselves. Is it really only the big givers? Or are they just the people I happen to notice more? Could there be another reason for that closeness? Like maybe they're on staff or they've been leading a ministry for 20 years? You have to actively look for counter evidence. Force yourself to remember a time your pastor showed real care for someone who couldn't give a dime back. The whole goal is to be an investigator looking for truth, not a prosecutor building a case. Step 3 is all about our words. We have to refuse, absolutely refuse to use divisive language, not just out loud, but even in our own thoughts. We have to kill that us versus them story. Phrases like, it's their church, or the pastor and his little group. That kind of language creates a class system in your own heart, and it just poisons everything. And instead of that poison, you replace it with this truth. The church is a body. Some people bring money. Other people bring time. Some people bring skills. Everybody brings what they have and lays it at the feet of Jesus. It is not a hierarchy. It's a family potluck, and every dish matters. So what happens if you do all this and that feeling is still just there? Well, step 4 is to consider having a conversation. But the key here is your posture. You're not marching in with an accusation. You're walking in with vulnerability. It's not you are doing this wrong. It's, hey, I'm really struggling with feeling this way, and I want your help because I don't want my heart to get hard. Big difference. And finally, step 5, at the end of the day, you have to make a decision. Regardless of what you find out, regardless of how a conversation goes, you choose. Even if you suspect there is some partiality, you can still choose grace. You can decide right then and there, I'm going to be a person who prays for my leader, not someone who tears them down in conversations. I refuse to let this one issue become the permanent label I put on them. You see, when you put all these steps together, they do something really powerful. They don't just help you manage a bad feeling. They help you write a completely new inner script, a whole new way you talk to yourself about your church and your pastor. So your new scripts, it starts with a declaration. This is you drawing a line in the sand. It says, I refuse to let an offense over money, whether it's real or perceived, turn me into a critic of my own pastor. You're basically deciding that the health of your heart is more important than the sting of your hurt. Next, your new script sets a boundary on your own behavior. It says, if I see an imbalance, my first response will be to pray. And maybe, just maybe, I'll speak up once, respectfully. But what I will not do is become a constant, grumbling accuser. It's the huge difference between addressing an issue and just nursing a grievance. And this is the final, most powerful reframe. Your script reminds you of the ultimate truth. My loyalty is to Christ first. My honor for my pastor is not built on whether or not we're best friends. Your respect for them isn't conditional on getting their attention. It's rooted in something so much deeper, your shared commitment to Jesus and his church. So let's end with this thought, because this whole idea is so much bigger than just church dynamics. Think about your life for a second. At your job, in your family, with your friends, what is one relationship, just one, that could be completely transformed if starting today you made the choice to pray more and accuse less?